I had a chance recently to sit down with Mike Tracz of Must Create Things on Instagram. That's his handle. He also runs MCT Guitars. MCT Must Create Things, and he reminds me that those are his initials as well. Very clever. And that's the kind of guy Mike is. He's clever. He, if there's a need for a tool or a jig or something to move him forward in his creation and his art and his visions, he'll make it happen. He creates the stairway in front of him to get to the second floor. He creates the ladder to take him up to the roof of the house. He's a very interesting guy. He wears many hats, but first and foremost, he's also a creator of fine guitars and Weissenborns, a very unique instrument, and he has some very interesting insight into the creation of this instrument, the history, where it's going, and how it's being used in the music industry. Fascinating guy, great chat. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate this as just as well.
And that's the temple where it all happens behind you. I'm sure that's a small portion of what I've seen on Instagram for sure.
It's not that big,
It's amazing.
I'm underground. So.
It's not that big, but the things that you pull off in that studio are just incredible.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you are. I was trying to think of the best way. Every time I set up these interviews, I think of one sentence or phrase that I can encompass my guest with, and you had two that came to mind. One of them is, you are the living, breathing definition of necessity is the mother of invention. And the next one is, you make things that make things.
I sure do.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible to watch.
You nailed it on that one. I actually get some flack for that as well. It's like, come on, just make it already, right? But
well,
it's journey, right?
Hence your account, Must Create Things.
Yep.
It's your lifeblood, and you can tell.
It sure is, and it's actually a play off my initials as well. So MCT.
Son of a gun, you're right. I didn't even catch that. I like that. That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. Very cool, man. And I love what you do on your account. It's basically it's how I've found 90% of my guests is on Instagram, and you are a jack of all trades for sure. You sent me your resume, a brief rundown of your history, and brief is not the word. You've been all over and dabbled in many things.
Yeah, I mean, I've been at it for a bit, but it's always been in me to make things. My father and grandfather worked with their hands, right? So they blue collar. One was a tool and die maker, the other's a retired pattern maker. So I just grew up around tools and making and fixing, and that's kind of why there's stuff like this behind me. You don't normally see metalworking machines in a woodworking shop, but that's my father's background. So
wow.
Yeah.
Did you inherit these tools?
No, I picked them up, and they're pretty busted. So I picked them up just as metalworking in general to as an excuse to hang out with my old man, and learn the things that I need to learn before it's too late. So I bought things that needed to be fixed, so he could help me fix them, and then teach me how to use them, and all that stuff kind of just spills over into everything I do here. Yeah.
Did you go to trade school at all, or was it completely by osmosis?
Well, I would say more osmosis. I did not go to trade school. My background, I went to college for design, so I went to an art school.
Where at?
Cleveland Institute of Art.
Okay.
Leading up to that, I went to Kent State for a couple of years, I was going to become an artist, to be honest.
Is there a good art program at Kent State?
Kent, yes, they were known for, at the time, they were really well known for their graphic design. But I was in printmaking and sculpture, and kind of general college stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
that I was essentially there to build a portfolio because I didn't have one that could get me into art school.
What
So
year was that, Mike?
I graduated in '98 from
Okay,
high
so
school.
Photoshop and Adobe were, the big go Quark Express and
It was starting, yeah,
hmm
yeah,
hmm
and
because
but I didn't have
that's when I started as a graphic
yeah,
designer.
that's right. You have a background in design as well, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I remember learning PageMaker with the librarian at my junior college, and we sat there with the manual and taught it to each other. It was
Yeah. I remember having to go through
the
manuals
very
and books.
fledgling stages, and design schools didn't teach that. You know.
No, they didn't. Yeah, when I was going, it was I was in mostly the arts, not the I hate to call it applied arts, right?
hmm
But
hmm
the graphic design, industrial design, where there's a kind of a career a trajectory or a path that you can follow and professional standpoint. But I was in the arts, so sculpture, printmaking, glass blowing, and that's what I did when I went to Cleveland Institute of Art. But yeah, funny enough, like the reason I still believe the reason I got into design was because of guitar making. I mean, not like the interest led me to like making useful objects, tools for musicians,
hmm
but I think that was the one piece of my portfolio that got me accepted into the program was my first guitar. It's
Wow.
actually
And
and I pulled it out for this. I hadn't touched it in forever.
the
I,
solid body of electric over here, huh?
yeah, this thing right here. I don't know if we're supposed to be doing show and tell, but this.
Hey, wow. Oh, dude, that is gorgeous.
So this was in 19. This would have been 95. I made this one.
I like where the truss rod cover is moved away from the nut. That's interesting.
I think mainly because I didn't know what I was doing, and that's where the hole lined up. I, to be honest, I don't even know if the truss rod's in the right. It might be an upside down. To be honest,
It's playable though, correct? It looks
yeah,
playable.
it's wicked heavy. I didn't read the chapter on chambering bodies. The neck is super fat. It's made out of Paduke. I don't know if you ever seen a Paduke neck. I've never seen one since this. There's probably a
Wow.
reason.
Wow.
Um, it's mahogany and maple. Yeah, but yeah, this
Nice.
I think this is what got me into partly interested in like creating things for people because that's what I do. I mean, in my day to day is I'm a product designer. I make
hmm
things that make people's lives better, right?
hmm hmm
Um, and you know that's what that is. That's how I see instrument making, at least from my perspective. Are
When you were
tools,
in, I'm
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
just as tools. Like tools
hmm
for musicians, creative people to not only make a living but make beautiful things, music for us to you know walk through life with.
And that goes back to you make things that make things.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Mike, when was that? What was your specific focus in fine arts? Where did you want to go? And when did that transition into, did it transition right into guitars from there? Is that my
So
understanding?
so I went to so I built this guitar in high school, right? And
Okay.
then I kind of put down guitar making until I
Hmm.
was done with college. I didn't build guitars through college. It was all I was focused on building portfolios, getting through the design program, internships, landing a job,
Where did
all
you
that.
think you were going to go with it? Industrial design, graphic design?
Industrial design right away.
Okay.
Like once
Okay.
I made it to the first year of foundation, which was painting, drawing, and, some sculpture. I got really hooked on glass blowing. But when I
Wow.
was so I have a minor in glass blowing. I took enough
Wow.
classes that
Wow.
they just couldn't kick me out of the studio. But when I found design, like I knew that was it, right? Not just because of the security,
Right.
being a little risk averse, and
Right.
the arts are that's a hustle. I mean, I have the utmost respect for artists, both
Absolutely.
musicians, fine artists, sculptors, poets. Um, it's a it's not
Yeah,
a thankless, but it's a lot of work, right?
it
Like
is.
we
Sweat
can
equity for sure.
really appreciate what all of those individuals do. But so when I found design that I could work with my hands and connect with people, and it was more consistent, right? I could, a project, and I can land projects and work on projects and and work with people. So
Did you transition into the corporate world after college right away, or try and do
right out of
something on your
school,
own?
I've always been employed.
Okay.
So I went on the consulting side. So,
Hmm.
and the reason was for the variety. So I was
Okay.
we were out in Boston for a number of years
Oh,
at
nice.
a firm out there. But where the clients are always different. It can be a medical product, a juvenile product, an athletic product. It could be packaging or instructions or wayfinding for a museum. All of that stuff um, just changes day in and day out, and the problems are always different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uncovering
Mm-hmm.
what people struggle with and how
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
make how to help them overcome that. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Do you have any heroes that you were back then influenced by, like Johnny Ives or Dyson, or were there guys like, wow, the aesthetic that they're creating, the
I should
form
have
follows function, but the form is incredible.
I should have I should be ready to answer that right away. But for me,
Well, or
but I've always
Chihuly probably was a giant glass
yeah
blowing. He's like the god of glass blowing.
yeah there's certainly right, and
Mm-hmm.
I do appreciate those the kind of the giants in design
Mm-hmm.
that have the name out there. Yves Behar is kind of one that comes to mind often, but for me, I've always been more on the functional side, like
Okay.
maybe closer to engineering than art. I
Okay.
always kind of struggled with art. The arts, there's it's storytelling. I mean, you have to have a narrative and really be able to communicate that. And for me, it was easier to communicate or solve those more either technical or physical problems than the aesthetic side. Now, I got over that throughout my career by creating tools and processes to get at aesthetics. I'm sure you
Mm-hmm.
know exactly that when you're working with a brand that it's not about you, right? It's about understanding that brand, who that brand's trying to connect with, and really unlocking their potential and getting myself out of the way. I've always aligned more with projects and programs like that, you know. So it's kind of like collaborating with a musician. It's
Mm-hmm.
when building the guitar, it's not about me and what I want it to look like. It's what will get them excited to pick it up and play and be inspired. So
You build your
I,
first solid body electric in high school. You go
yeah,
to design in the university level. You go into the corporate world designing for other entities. Was guitar always in the back of your mind? Were you kind of dabbling at
it
home
was.
with it, or
It came back around 2006. We were still out in Boston, renting an apartment. Had no space. I had access to a shop from where I worked
mm,
at, but most of the work was done on the back porch or a kitchen table with hand tools. And
wow,
every instrument I built early on was like I wanted something that I either couldn't afford or didn't exist, right? So like that
for
guitar,
your own use?
yeah, yeah, and it was
Hmm.
always an excuse. Like I started playing guitar when I was a teenager, right? Um,
Hmm.
couldn't afford the three guitars I wanted, smushed them all together into this one. Like
There you
a
go.
SG, a 335, and name any Paul Reed Smith, and you can probably see the influences
I
in
can
there.
see the PRS influences in there, definitely.
And a funny story about that is I actually got him to sign it. He was doing like a guitar center, like after hours thing. And I somehow found out about it. And I just totally crashed it. I just showed up with my guitar.
Well, and the signatures on that guitar,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't see
yeah.
it. Where you're kidding me?
It's on the back. I don't know if you can.
Son of a gun. Wow. Wow, that's amazing, man.
And but like it's always been like I wanted to learn how to play. Well, in this case, I wanted to play guitar better. It didn't work, right? But it got me a guitar. And then like in 2006, when I got back into it, I was getting heavy into like listening to fingerstyle blues and ragtime and a lot of things like that. And I built a nylon string like parlor crossover guitar, and it was my first like acoustic guitar.
How did you research it? Did you find one at a pawn shop and pick it apart, or go on? I mean, you didn't have online
forums.
You had online resources, but it was minimal back then.
Yeah, there was like online forums, and then you know, like I've got every book you can get. You know, like the making a classical guitar, or Cupiano's book, and stuff like that. Like I had those, and I was piecing together little bits of information. But like I had this sound that I wanted to do. I was listening to like on repeat Freight Train by Elizabeth Cotten, like over and over and over. I wanted to be able to play that, so I built this guitar that could help me get that sound. Well, I never really learned how to play the song, but again, I got a guitar, and I got deeper into guitar making. And then after that was ukuleles. Like almost immediately after that, I came across a friend of mine gave me some wood. My nephew's birthday was coming up, so I made him and the son of that friend who gave me the wood ukuleles. And so I had those forms sitting around, and that's kind of popped up into, that's kind of what I'm working on now, is a lot of small bodied instruments because of that. But that was all on the back porch of
amazing.
Like I have photos of it, of like necks clamped to 2x4 railings at our apartment. I'm carving them. It was, yeah. So
Guitar Garage Talk is brought to you by YourGuitarMechanic.com. Setups, repairs, restrings, and more. Whatever your guitar or bass needs, we can get it done. Offering pickup and delivery service in the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. YourGuitarMechanic.com. Now, back to the program.
It's incredible all the tools that exist out there, and honestly, with the bare handful of tools, you can create amazing things. Yeah, it's this acquisition syndrome that I hate to say it, but I fall prey to with StewMac. I mean, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I need this, I need that. There's 5 different tools to do the same job. Which one's the best one?
I need to know which fret file to get. So if you can help me with that one. Help me pick out a fret file.
For what purpose on frets? Like crowning or edging?
Yeah, crowning after leveling for the first setup.
You know, and I just did an interview, and I posted it today on Spotify with Jim Glinsky of Glinsky Customs out of Austin, Texas. And I found him on the Luth group, which you're a member of.
Sure am, yeah. That's
yeah.
Great.
I would go to the Luth group and ask. I don't want to answer that question because I know there's 10 different answers, and I'm going to give you the StewMac standard Z file answer.
I've been wanting to try it.
It looks pretty amazing, actually. It's yeah. But Jim said he had a file that he loved for so many years, and he tried the Z file a couple of years ago, and he went back to his old original file. Oh, it's cool, but it seems a little maybe gimmicky, I would say.
I'm still using a piece of plastic with like a round slot in it and sandpaper.
I love that. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it gets the job done.
Yeah, it really does.
Absolutely. And it's cool because I was watching, I don't know if you know on YouTube, Rhett Scholl. He's a guitarist out of Atlanta. And every so often he talks about, he's a player, and he talks about gear, compares like the top 5 Fender Jazz Masters, that kind of stuff. And then Sweetwater sends him all the free instruments and stuff. He had one recently where he upgraded his Jazz Master to, it's the Squire level, for a couple $100, upgraded it to as close to he could as the $3,000 top of the line Jazz Master. So he takes it to this luthier in Atlanta, one of his buddies, and he wants the fingerboard rolled. He wants that nice feel of a worn rosewood, you know what I mean? Been played for decades, smooth. So the guy gets he's like, "You want to see the tool?" He grabs his Phillips screwdriver and just rubs the hell out of the corner until and he's touching it on camera going, "Oh my God, really? Is that it?"
That's
taking notes. I'm like, "You screwdriver, customer ever asks for rolled fingerboard.
I
And
got
now
one
I'm
of
thinking
those.
about doing it to mine, I'm going
Yeah.
to roll the fingerboard on this guy.
Oh, that's awesome. See, Instagram's a great thing. And it's like getting a peek into everyone's shop. Like you would, I don't know how else. I mean, other than, people like you that knock on doors and get people and have interviews. Like that's a huge deal for all of us
And the
listening.
Luth
Right?
group. And yeah.
But
back in the day, you had to research how to get a hold of how to make a classical guitar.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
how did you find it? I mean, you said groups, but and then
there was
someone
like,
in the group said, check out that book by that Spanish maker, yada, yada, yada. And then suddenly you're going to the library or Amazon or.
Yeah, buying the books. I did get some from the library, and I have some photocopied pages in binders around, but like it's so much better now. Like I remember doing forums and like what was it, official Luthiers forum? I would play on that one for a really long time, or Luthier Community, I think, was another one, and acoustic guitar forums one now that is still pretty active. But you'd find your good guys on there, and eventually you make friends. But any like newbie getting into it, you ask a question, you always get did you use the search bar? Like, come on, guys, like this, and they just lay into them. Like, all right, like
you have to be a little more generous and humble because, dude, you had to get a start sometime, and one of the elderlies passed down the information to you.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's not a protective thing, and you're right. I find that there is some trade secret. Well, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. You know what I mean? It's
I get, but I also don't. I don't practice that. I'm like about if anybody wants anything from me, you just gotta ask. Your
Etsy stores focus solely on these beautiful hair accessories, these wonderfully rounded circle. What would you call those? Hair?
Call them French hairpins or hair forks.
Okay.
And
they're
make
gorgeous.
barrettes and combs and stuff like that. But that's all comes back to the guitar stuff, like stacks of little pieces of precious wood. And I made some things for friends. Someone's like, you should sell these. Well, how do you sell them? Here, there's this thing called Etsy. It's only 20 cents. It's a 20 cents gamble to put something on Etsy, right? And then see how it goes. And it took off. Like that keeps me busier than guitar stuff.
Fulfillment, marketing, blah, blah,
making the stuff. Keep making. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, that made me think, why doesn't he sell his stringed instrument creations, and why doesn't he sell these amazing, that little sander that you developed with the pieces of rolled up paper and a toothpick, holding it into, it's like a revolver barrel, like on an old revolver. Incredible. Why don't you have a separate shop for that stuff? Luthier tools you never would have thought about, or woodworking tools, or
most of those, like those 3D printing things. So like I've been CAD since I've been like design. Like when I came up in industrial design, CAD was just kind of taken. So like that's how I draw. I go from paper right into there. And so that's why I have a lot of 3D printed things around here and those tools. So I'm trying to get most of that stuff up on the Luth group, to be honest. So, and because Ian set up a 3D print repository that you can go and download. If you're a member, you can download, and if you have access to a printer, which, I'm not gonna say they're affordable, but they're more affordable. But there's at least around here in Cleveland, there's libraries have 3D printers that you can go use. I'm sure, I don't know if your area is the same or not, but
most likely it is.
Like, so if you're part of the Luth group and you want any of those tools, and there's tons of them on that 3D print repository, you just download them, print them.
Have you uploaded any of your tools or prints or?
Yeah, I have so I'll describe things that I'm holding.
I saw the post there for that.
So the inspection, or the surface inspection light, it's essentially like surfboarders. If you've ever seen a surfboard shaper, raking light, or even like anything, if you're surfacing anything, the raking light is the way to really understand the surfaces. So I made a tool that really just kind of catch or shines light directly across the surface, so you can get those shadows. You can see scratches, you can see little divots if you're surfacing something, dings and stuff that you want to find before you go into finish. And then I've made a couple like chamfer sanding blocks that
I saw those.
Those are
The
also
light,
fun.
if going back to the light, it's basically a flashlight, like a pen light, aiming down at a mirror, and that mirror reflects that light on a nice span across the surface.
Yep.
And in your Instagram post, you turned out the lights and you're moving it across the surface of a guitar, looking for those imperfections. It was pretty genius.
Got all those scratches. So like all that stuff I'll put up there. But I have a couple other tools that I'm developing now that I use all the time, but you can't. They don't exist anymore. They're little spoke shades that I've modified for carving braces and things like that. I'm working on developing a version of that, which if it works out, I'll probably end up selling those because it's more than just a 3D print thing. But yeah, I mean, I love making tools. I love making fixtures.
So the Luth group right now is your main resource for sharing your 3D creations.
I'm trying to give back, like it's it's like nothing, like to be part of it, like monetary wise, like, and I get so much out of it that it's
absolutely,
you try to give back in any way you can. It's like the same, like that's why I was so into forums and I stuck with them for so long, is I learned so much that like I would document builds on there so people could see them.
Amazing.
It was before Instagram, but like it's make it easier for someone else to get into it. Like I don't have any of them around anymore, but those lap slide guitars, like I put together a whole build video, and if anyone wants plans, you just let me know and I'll send you my plans that go along with that whole build series on how to make it.
That is a great segue into the stringed instruments that you do dabble in. You said ukuleles, small scale guitars.
Yep.
And then and correct me if I'm wrong, Weissenborn or Weissenborn?
I would probably say it the second way, but I hear Weissenborn. Most people say it like that, but my grandmother would have said Weissenborn.
Okay, so the German and he of German origin, the original, named after the guy who designed it.
Correct. Yeah, Herman.
So Weissen might be the correct way to.
Yeah. I started. Go ahead.
No. I was going to say the Weissenborn. I'm going to be super geeky about it. The Weissenborn, because I said ukulele the other day, and the guy went ukulele, and I went, okay, I'm mispronouncing it. I'm going to say ukulele from now on. Yeah. The Weissenborn is a lap slide guitar, and the videos you sent me of these guys using your creations, just beautiful, and so diverse in musical approaches to it. It's just gorgeous stuff. Thank you. The Weissenborn is not only, but the neck, the body elongates into the neck. So it'd be impossible to play it like a standard guitar because your hand wouldn't be able to wrap around it. But I'm sure that when I first saw it, my immediate thought was, well, of course, the tone resonating from where the slide is making contact to the string on the fingerboard would just resonate through that chamber in a completely different way.
Oh, it certainly does. Yeah, it's a hollow neck. The whole thing, it's hollow all the way up to just probably a few inches south of the nut. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
very impressive. What made you gravitate towards that as opposed to a traditional guitar?
So like all the other guitars, like it was slide guitar found its way into my ears. And I'm like, how are they doing this? And it turned out that it wasn't like electric slide guitar that was catching me. It was like this acoustic slide, and it didn't have the clanking on the there's no clanking on the neck. I'm like, what is going? This sounds like a dobro, but it's not. So I just started. I'm like, what is this? What is this? And I was listening to like at the time John Butler and Kelly Joe Phelps like on repeat, and I just dug into it, and like I saw, like you look up Kelly Joe Phelps, and at the time he was playing a dreadnought on his lap, and I just got stuck in on that. Like, I want to learn how to play that. Like every other guitar I'm making, like I never. So Patrick, I never learned how to play these guitars.
Hmm.
I can't play guitar. That's why I have to. I have to.
That's what you said in your resume. Horrible guitar player.
Yeah, I can't.
Well, then I'd have to ask if this guy has a dreadnought in his lap and he's getting the Weissenborn effect without the clankiness that you're referring to. Did he raise the action somehow so that he's further? How did he do that?
I think he had a tall nut put on it. I mean, you can
nut,
get,
not the saddle, just the nut.
He probably had to raise the saddle too, but I know you can get like nut raisers for just standard guitars. It's like a hunk of angle that goes underneath the nut and lifts them up, so you can play it like that.
Okay.
So you didn't get the frets. But like John Butler was playing a Weissenborn, right? And like there's another guy, Xavier Rudd, who's pretty popular contemporary musician that was doing that. And I dove deep into that, and like all I could find were like a few photos. There's a few guys on a Australian guitar forum that were making them.
Wow.
And didn't have much to say about it other than like I could see their photos, and I was dropping them in the Photoshop and Illustrator and trying to pull dimensions because I knew a scale length. And
okay, what is the scale length on a Weissenborn? Are there different scale lengths, or is it one particular?
I build a 25-inch scale, and then the baritone that it's out for finish right now, but I'm making a baritone right now. It's 27.
Wow.
So it's a deeper body. It's a little bit larger body, and then the 27-inch scale. But they're typically 20, 25.
Is it obviously it'd be an open tuning, standard guitar open tuning because it is 6 strings still. Is that correct? Or how does the baritone? Baritone's also 6.
It's 6 strings, and I think it's just down to C instead of. I mean, it's a lot. It's like 2 lower, I guess. But
okay.
Like the standard 25 scale, I can't remember all the tunings off. Everyone's got a different open tuning, but it's like like an open D or something is a lot with they'll throw an F sharp in there somewhere, but like it's typically an open D tuning, like a fingerstyle guitarist would play. So when you strum across, it's an open chord.
Okay, sure. And it looks like the slide, it's mostly these metal slides that lap steel guys probably use, right? It's got the nice little divots in there that you can pretty much grip your fingers long ways horizontally. Yeah, very comfortable, a lot of weight to it to keep the pressure on the string as you're gliding across. Yeah. Have you ever seen any approaches with glass slides or the old metal tube slide? Or
I've seen a couple glass slides for lap slide, but they're like cut in half and infilled with wood or something. But you can drag whatever you want across it. But the weight does help. And the setup as well is pretty important. Unlike a guitar, like with frets, you're trying to line the bottoms of the strings. You want to line up the tops of the strings on the slide setup so that you don't get that rattle, that buzz, and that kind of drag. So
how do you intonate it and make it? Is it by harmonics on the 12th or?
That's the great thing is you don't have to. It's just a straight saddle, because you're not fretting, so you don't have to deal with the string stretching right at the 12th. So like, and the fret markers are really, I mean,
well, that's an interesting point. You're going from one point to another point, no in between connecting points over a bridge that's interesting.
It's infinite. So like the fret positions, I'll put fake frets in there, but they don't even really line up with what the player's seeing. Like you're sitting there looking at you're trying to fret the 3rd with a bar. You're gonna it kind of lines up with almost the 4th or 5th fret because of the angle you're looking at it. So it's the musicians really, you just have to have they have that feel. They finds that the muscle memory and
muscle memory. My wife is a cello player, and I am blown away how cello players have the muscle memory to the 6 different positions on a neck. I mean, heck, and even jazz stand-up bassists, it's thankfully you've got the luxury of sliding, like take Jaco Pastorius. I bought a fretless bass during the pandemic because I thought it'd be cool I kept using my wife's cello as a stand-up, and finally I went, forget it. I'm just going to go out and buy a fretless bass. I got a cheap Squire, and I'm like, I'm Jaco Pastorius, and I found I wasn't hitting exact areas. Granted, the frets are printed on here, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be in tune when your finger slaps down.
Yep.
So I found a lot of the time I'm going up to the note or down to the note. And I finally just gave up. I'm like,
I can't imagine it's easy.
No.
At all. I mean, just like rocking your finger would change the note too. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like Jerry Douglas, he's played one of mine before, but like I don't know how they nail it. Like they just can lock in. I really don't know. Or even like Megan Lovell of Larkin Poe. She's like, if you're not listening, if everyone listening is not listening to her play, they should all hop on and check out what Larkin Poe's up to. But yeah, she's probably
Larkin Poe.
Yeah, she's one of the wildest slide players out there right now. So
does she have one of your Weissenborns?
She does. Yep.
Oh, fantastic. How do people find you? How do they find your Weissenborns? You're on Instagram, but you're not advertising. How do you luck out on that one musician going, I need a Weissenborn. I know who makes them.
I reach out to them. I reach out every single one of them. Like most all the guitars that I have. I mean, I do take commissions, so people will find now the people that I'm on Instagram, people will find me. But most of it's like a guitar hero. It's an inspiration. Like I end up that sound that I want to make something for them, and then I end up starting it. I just start the project with them in mind, and I reach out and go figure. They are regular people, and if you have the right intention, a lot of times they'll write back, and that's how I've got to know a lot of those great musicians that I would have never ever in my wildest dreams have connected with.
Weissenborn is such an odd hashtag. All you need to do is hashtag Weissenborn, and you probably find your resources.
Yep. So
Guitar Garage Talk is brought to you by YourGuitarMechanic.com. Setups, repairs, restrings, and more. Whatever your guitar or bass needs, we can get it done. Offering pickup and delivery service in the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. YourGuitarMechanic.com. Now, back to the program.
And then when someone commissions you, what kind of requests do they come with? I mean, it's the standard 25 scale. It's like, hey, I'd like this kind of wood, or
typically, like I'll shoot them some. First off, we're gonna make sure that we're gonna work well together, right? And so we go through that kind of courting process. We talk and emails so that it's not a nightmare for me or them, right? Like I want it to be a cool thing, right?
Right.
So we make it through that, and then it's I share the woods that I have, and we start working, and we just start working from there. I typically build with local woods. I'm looking up in my wood stash, but like most of it's domestic. I try to work in domestic woods that are sawn near here.
Mm-hmm.
Great if I can know the sawyer and the tree that it was. And I collect those. So I've been lucky that nobody's kind of pushed back on that, because I want to avoid exotics. I won't work in endangered woods or anything that's on the CITES list. One, I think it's horrible that you couldn't travel with it, right? Like you have to have documentation to travel. I have to have documentation to own it and use it. And the amount of work and resources and people involved with getting illegal woods over to us is just not something I want to be part of. So we make it through that, and the rest is just picking out appointments and working on inlays and things like that. That again, something that's special to them that I can pull off, right? So
I saw some really beautiful ones. You did a tortoise, literally a turtle, in abalone. Really gorgeous inlays. Really good
yeah,
stuff.
thank you.
Yeah. Do you have, and you have, I guess I should ask this, because I was looking at it, you've got because I know nothing really about construction of an acoustic instrument,
Okay.
but you have the body shape that you mold the wood into. Did you create those shapes, or were those predetermined from, like, you purchased them? Because they look handmade.
All the forms are handmade, and the shapes are like the designs are mine. So like if you were
Wow.
if you were to lay mine, it looks like a Weissenborn, right? But if you
Yeah.
lay it on there, it's slightly different. Like you can, the guitar needs to look like a guitar, and you can tweak it a little bit. And there's like a certain point where it doesn't look and doesn't feel right. But
Okay.
I've tweaked all that. But all the forms, yeah, I make those myself, and that was on bandsaws and stuff like that. But now I have access to a CNC down here now that
Yeah.
I use to that makes those things easier and more accurate and quicker.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I can tell you're in CNC heaven.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Did you take Freddie Mercury's courses at all that he offered, or
I
did
have
you?
not.
Yeah.
I want to. The only problem is I don't use the software he uses. So like
Oh, what do you use?
I use Fusion 360, and
Okay.
he's into Rhino.
Rhino.
So
Is that
I
really a
am into
necessary? Do you really have to be on the necessary same plane as him with that, or?
well I don't know. I'd have to ask him, because if I
Yeah.
don't, then I would.
Okay.
Because it would be interesting to get into his head and just the strategy
Okay.
that he teaches, if using another software package isn't distracting to him in the class, right? So
Yeah.
like how things are, just where the buttons are really, and the Fusion and Rhino are a lot different.
Right.
One's parametric and one's more nerves. Not that that means anything to you, but like the way you use them is a little bit different. I guess it's kind of like vector and raster, right? Like Fusion's more vector, meaning like it's mathematic, and that you can grab a circle and scale it to infinity, and it stays at a nice resolution. But if you anything at like maybe raster's not a good parallel to Rhino, but in that it's not as forgiving from a update later perspective.
And I kind of understand where you're going at, because as a graphic designer, I'll approach a design from either Photoshop or Illustrator,
Yep.
and then go from there, because you're right, one's raster based and one's vector based.
Yep.
But the lines are blurring.
They
Hopefully
are.
hopefully the 3D world will start homogenizing a bit more as well.
Yeah.
For the CNC world, I guess.
Yep.
And and with 3D printing, you also use Fusion for that as well, to create your models. Okay.
Yep. And then I use Cura as a slicer. It's a free software to slice it. So once you have a CAD file, you create something that a slicer can interact with. So typically an STL file, right? And then the slicer, which is what creates essentially the G code for the robot to move in space. It's literally slices layer by layer by layer, and gives you all of the coordinates and parameters to move around and space in that layer, then move up or down or over, and build things in
interesting
in 3D.
Do you find the integrity of 3D? What material? What's the filament that you use?
I use a lot of PLA.
Okay.
So it's cheap. There's other things. I don't have a super capable machine. I have like a budget 3D printer.
Okay.
But it works well. And for anything that has to be strong, I'll just hit it with super glue or something.
I gotcha. Okay.
Thicker. So
sure. Well, then and I saw that you started dabbling in Corian, and you're cutting that in your CNC machine?
Yeah.
Man, that's insane. That vacuum fingerboard for a banjo, But how did you get that hole to move across a channel and then come back up again through Corian? How are you
So
printing that?
I milled a slot first to connect the two, and then I plugged it. And
it's
then
a plug. I didn't even notice. It's
Yeah.
seamless. You can't even tell.
Yeah, and then just poke 2 holes in it.
Son of a
Yeah,
gun.
I didn't know how I was going to do it because, again, I came across some corian, like a family member gave me some scraps, and it's a 1/2 inch thick, which is really hard to do. What you're asking me about, like getting a hole to go into the side, because you have to hook it up to a vacuum pump somehow with a fitting, and typically they go into the sides of stuff, right? Or like you said, you have to go down, over, up, and I didn't want to glue it together. I didn't want to buy more material. So I just did something, and it somehow worked out. So
Mike, I swear you must have the patience of a saint. I've got this little sign in my workshop here. Speedy Gonzalez had his cousin Slowpoke Rodriguez, I believe his name was, and he's got a Stratocaster on his shoulder, and it says "Speed Kills." And I made it in Photoshop one day because I found myself, there's a zen to it, and I can tell in your postings, slowing your mind down, thinking of the solution, opening at the same time, opening up to possibilities. I'm sure you've got drawers and drawers of stuff that you've jerry rigged that
I do, yeah.
And are they all labeled? Because I swear to God, every time I make something like that, I'm like, I'm going to put it here. I'm going to remember it's here. And I come back later going, where the hell did I put that?
It's just like that. I'm just like that. So, yeah.
What? Where the hell did I put it?
I put it somewhere if I put it somewhere so I remember, I will forget.
Yeah. As long as it's in your shop there, it hasn't gone anywhere else. Yeah.
But if I set it down, I'll be able to find it. That's
Suddenly you have tables of stuff that's just set down everywhere.
Yep. That's why I'm showing the top part of the shop right now.
Well, there you go. So the Weissenborn, it's a per commission thing. You haven't made one for yourself?
No, I don't have. They just keep going out. Yeah.
Man.
Yep. And right now I've got 3 of those small body guitars that I'm making right now. This is my biggest batch I've ever had.
Wow. Your fingerboards, are those Richlight?
I was using similar Rocklight. They sound the same, right? But it's
is it 2 different products, Rocklight and Richlight?
Yeah. The black ones I'm using Rocklight, and I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to use it for. It's Richlight's layers. It's not exactly, but it's
my understanding is it's pressed paper almost, basically, and just highly compressed.
And I think Rocklight is similar, except for the fact that it's not as dense. So I've read good and bad things about both of them, but in my tests and use have been very stable. And I've enjoyed using them because I don't like to use ebony. But on these current builds, I'm using something from, it's called Thermalwood Canada. They make this stuff called Obsidian Ebony, and I'm giving it a try. Right now, it started off as maple, and they use heat and resin to darken it, and it comes out like a deep brown. And when you hit it with finish, it turns almost black. So I'm excited to give that a try because it's wood
on the guitars and the Weissenborns.
Yeah.
Interesting. How would you treat that if I were I'm a repair guy and someone brought one in? Does it need treating at all, like a lemon oil, or just don't even touch it? It's perfectly fine.
On the Rocklight, the ukuleles that I sent out, or the 6-string instruments, I hit them with the lemon oil. Yeah, okay. I treat it just like any other fingerboard. Yeah.
Okay, so it is porous enough it soaks it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's dense enough that it doesn't wear. I mean, you'd think that you'd be able to dent it pretty easy, but it acts a lot like wood. Like if you get a really bad ding, you can steam it out like anything else. It's colored all the way through. It doesn't have a grain to raise, but it does kind of raise its grain if you do get it wet or use steam, but it knocks down and polishes and burnishes just like any other wood would. But
interesting. Interesting. How's
Yep.
the bracing on a Weissenborn? Is it pretty much the same as an acoustic, or when you
Mine
get
are
up into the
very
neck
similar.
region, I'm sure there's all sorts of wild bracing going on in there.
It's very similar. On mine at least, on traditional Weissenborns, they have an X brace, and then they do kind of like a ladder brace up below in the bottom two legs of the X, and they have some finger braces that are finger braces out on the side. But mine's I would say mine's closer to a dreadnought, like a bluegrass dreadnought, than a Weissenborn. So it has a couple of tone bars that run asymmetric tone bars on the lower X, and some finger braces and things like that. But it has a monster bridge plate on it. I put
Okay.
it's tall. It's probably like 2.5, almost 3 inches tall.
And the KK system underneath that bridge
Mhm.
still picks up pretty good.
Oh, it sure does. Yeah. Well,
Wow.
I use Padauk for my bridge plates. I love using
Okay.
it. It's big, but it's not super thin. Like it's like 80, almost 90 thousandths thick. So maybe it's thick. I don't know. But I love using that for bridge plates. But yeah,
Okay.
I put them on but I install them before the box goes together. And I think you talked about it in another podcast where you have I have a drawer full of golf tees. So
They're keeping that company in business. I got the kit, and I'm like, they literally are sourcing these from Titleist or something. I mean, what's
Yep.
going on here?
But
Yeah.
I locate them with magnets so that I know exactly where they're going. So I'll locate the bridge, and then I'll drop magnets so I can transfer the exact location from where I want, from the top to the inside, and
Smart.
just super glue them in. Yep.
Guitar Garage Talk is brought to you by YourGuitarMechanic.com. Setups, repairs, restrings, and more. Whatever your guitar or bass needs, we can get it done. Offering pickup and delivery service in the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. YourGuitarMechanic.com. Now, back to the program.
I have to ask, and this is probably going to pain you because I can tell you're into sustainability. Sustainability is the driving force in the builders that I've been talking with, and I can tell that's your mantra as well. And that being the case, I noticed the Weissenborn has metal tuning pegs.
Mhm.
Is it possible to have? I look at my wife's cello, and she's got these wooden. Granted, I mean, my God, I have to, I pain watching her try and tune this thing. But then they've got the fine tuner down at the bottom, and that's really where it happens. This is the
Mhm.
macro, and this is the micro. Have you ever thought about, because you're a solutions guy and you're a wood guy, and have you ever thought about making a pure wood creation? And is that even possible?
I'm sure it's possible. I mean, like the ukuleles use friction tuners still. You can still find them. I don't know. I'd love to explore it. I would be more interested in see the musicians, how they would want to, their take on that, and how they would want to deal with the tuning issues that would be associated. Like I started using plastic tuning. That I think they're plastic. They probably have some sort of fiberglass or some sort of glass reinforcement in them, made by Graphtec. That they make.
I like Graphtec.
So I've been using those on the small instruments. I think they're called tunelele tuners. They're a planetary tuning peg, and they're super light. That's the thing that I've always had a trouble with on small instruments. Is like you just get a bit of heavy headstock, and you shouldn't have to wear a shoulder strap to play a small instrument.
Right.
To keep it upright. So I found those and love them. So, but a high ratio tuner for the musicians that's something that's smooth and it's super precise. Yeah, I'll go there every time.
How old is the Weissenborn? I went and looked up Wikipedia, but I don't remember what was it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
1800s. It's not a very old instrument. Is that my understanding, or?
probably, honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I have to look, I have to go look. But
I guess it would go way back, and if not Weissenborn before him, there must have been similar designs of some sort.
yep, yeah, it's
You know,
not
and that
not a new instrument. Yeah,
yeah, and that being the case, how well, if you're studying the origins of the classical guitar and its origins from Spain, pre-metalworking, yeah, I mean, amazing songs being created on these
yep.
instruments. They must have. How did they achieve as precise as you could tunability back in the day?
Yeah, I think the steel string guitars were around by the time that the Weissenborns were doing it. So, metal
Okay.
tuners and stuff like that. So it's
Mhm.
it's not a new instrument, but I don't doesn't go back. I don't know if it goes back that far, but it certainly was, more primitive and at least in its construction than what we have available now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mine's
that'd be fun to see if it'd be possible. It'd be
oh, for
interesting.
sure.
Yeah, and I can tell that that'd be something that you would definitely dive into.
Yeah, like any excuse to pull out the tapered reamer to try and get a
Uh,
friction peg to work. There you go.
yeah, you got to be really careful with those things. I found out the hard way.
Yeah, you only need a little bit.
Ooh,
You did a half a turn. You should have done an eighth a turn. Yeah, I've
yeah.
been there.
Oh, I hate that. And there's no going back once
No,
you.
there's
Yeah.
no undo. Does anyone make like super fat tuning or bridge pins?
I think Martin has a
All right.
special one. Yeah, for the older guitars that had to be re-reamed or something to that
Yeah,
effect. I know they make an extra large pick guard
there
that
you go.
camouflages previous scarring and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So that'll be the new guitar part you can buy. The stuff that camouflages the crap that happened before, probably.
It's gonna
Who are
happen.
your two dogs, Mike? At the end of most of your posts, it pops into these two
Yeah,
dogs, the cutest freaking creatures. What are their
that's
names?
Maddie and Ginger. Yeah, Maddie's
Maddie and Ginger.
the big brown one, and Ginger's the little bit smaller white one. Yeah.
It's awesome because I saw it in one post and I was like, oh, that's clever, that's cute. And then I was watching another post, boom, dog face. Oh, this is the most precise machinery. Look at that, boom, dog face.
Because that's like I it started off as a joke because I was talking with a friend. It's like the only reason we're on Instagram is guitars and dogs, dog
Hey,
videos.
I'm right there with you. And food in my case because I love cooking.
There
Yeah.
you go.
You said that one of your, and again, this is a complete. I'm a virgin when it comes to guitar making, but French polish. Can you explain the process? What is French polish? You said it was your preferred method. What is that?
It's a way to apply shellac. So it's lots and lots and lots of micro layers. What you end up doing is instead of typically when you put like you think about like putting on finish is either sprayed, wiped on, pretty thick and wet, or brushed on, right? But what in French polishing you take the shellac and you load a pad, which is typically made up of felt or wool with a cotton kind of liner, and it turns into like a little fabric pad, and you put the shellac into that a very small amount, and you end up rubbing on circle, 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 line, 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 and you slowly build up the finish through friction and laying it down. So like it takes a lot longer, but it's super thin. It's very transparent. It's easy to repair, um, but it's fragile, right? So like shellac and sweat don't play well together. Which you probably know from older instruments, like where your forearm would rest, or if you've ever had a French polished neck and it gets like gummy or worn off or things like that. But it's just a really rewarding process to apply it. I use grain alcohol, so to create the shellac mixture. So between, you know, shellac is bugs and grain alcohol, it's about as safe of finish to apply in a basement shop with a wife and dogs. So I don't spray things. I try to keep it as safe as possible.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Are your instruments, and if someone gets one from you, it's pretty much guaranteed it'll be French polished, or is that a request?
It on these three, it was a requirement. They had to be on board with it.
Okay.
Which they were. But I think the last three slide guitars I made, I sent out for to get sprayed in nitro because it was like a no-go. It like the client had to have it that way. So
okay. Well, then that would beg the question too, the Weissenborn, because it's such a unique instrument. Where there, like you mentioned, armrest and the standard neck wear that happens on guitars. What's the standard wear that you would start seeing on a Weissenborn? Where do they?
It's from the pinky, like we're
resting on the
resting on like just past the high E string or the first string. That you'll get, there's going to be finger marks, or even underneath the first two strings. Some players will hook their pinky under there and just have as a registration, right? And you'll get scratches underneath the first and second string. But it's really the pinky somewhere around the bridge, just off the first string. Yeah.
And it's because the Weissenborn has a standard sound hole like an acoustic guitar would.
Yep.
Have you thought about F holes as a possible approach to a Weissenborn, or would that be would that negate the whole resonance of the instrument?
No, that's all open.
Interesting. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen makers make archtop versions of it. With a like a tailpiece and a bridge that you would have on an archtop guitar as opposed to a pin bridge. I made a double back version a while ago.
What's a double back?
It has two backs on it. So I have a floating back in there, and the idea was that you ever picked up an acoustic that's like super light, and when you play it, you can feel it on your chest. You get that feeling, like it's not just the sound, but you get this feeling, right? And then you try to like kind of stay away from it so the guitar can play off each other. I do believe that the back plays a role in the sound, and
because it's constantly making contact with the lap of the player. It's at all times
muted, so it kind of takes that completely out of it. And I've talked to players where they like when you set it down. This one player, when I gave it to him, he set it down. He kind of wiggled it on his knee. He was playing it, and then he wiggled it until he found a spot. And what he ended up doing was lining his leg underneath one of the ladder braces on the back, which let everything else kind of vibrate. Because if you went across them, you were dampening things, and I couldn't get it out of my head that like why, right? So I made a double back one where I had a cedar back in there floating that and then had a pretty much a dress back, like it was a sycamore sides, back and sides. So I had that on the player side, the outward facing. So it didn't matter where you laid it down. And
wow,
sure enough, when I gave that same player this guitar, he was like, what's going on here? Like, because I had been talking to him for years, trying to get him to bite on a guitar, and he's like, oh, this one's close, and that's all he would say. He wouldn't take it with him. So I just kept trying, and you finally got him with that with that double back. Wow. He took that one home with him. But
and is that going to be a unique one-off, or someone could request it now?
I'm thinking about doing it again because he keeps raving about it, and I've heard that it works really well in the studio. It records well in the studio.
The thing that fascinates me about acoustic guitars, and especially modern designers, are the holes, the sound holes, the way they're exploring escapism of the tone and the air vibration coming out. Holes on the side of the body. Have you ever thought about something to that effect on me, because you've got all this surface area on the neck, like chambered or anything that would, like, if there were holes on the neck, would that impede on the player? Probably not, right? But it might create like an extra orchestra, you know.
That's a great thought, because like the side ports, my understanding, and I've built guitars with side ports, and the classical guitar started doing it, and then you see it a lot in steel string now, like boutique or like
or even archtop jazz guitars.
Yeah. So, and my understanding was it was like a amplifier for the player, so that, because like you have these sound holes, whether it's a hole or an F hole, it's facing the audience, right? It's
right,
but the player doesn't get to experience that, and that was what sparked that. But to your question, if I were to try it, like it makes a lot of sense, because like on a lap slide, the sound hole's super selfish. It's going right to the player, and the audience gets nothing, right? So I would hazard that it could be a better experience for the audience if we put ports on the side that face them, right?
Interesting.
Sending out instead of, definitely wouldn't put it towards the belly, but yeah, imagine. I wonder what it would sound like.
The amplification would just, wow.
Yeah.
And it kind of stinks that you'd have to create it to find out, because that's a lot of. How long does it take to create from 0 to 60 on a Weissenborn? How long does that take you?
It takes me about a year. Just
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I chip away at it, so it's, you know, I could probably get them done in a couple months. If that was.
And you're such an organic creator. I could definitely see that.
Guitar Garage Talk is brought to you by YourGuitarMechanic.com. Setups, repairs, restrings, and more. Whatever your guitar or bass needs, we can get it done. Offering pickup and delivery service in the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. YourGuitarMechanic.com. Now, back to the program.
You said that you source a lot from fallen lumber. You probably have a lumber yard or two that you go to, your usual stop bys.
Yeah.
Because when I read that, I went, well, how does he get the alert that a tree fell? How do you? So it's the lumber yard calling you, going, dude, I got this amazing black limba. Stop in and yada yada yada. I mean, that kind of a thing.
Well, it's that there was a guy I knew. He's not doing it anymore. I bought all the wood I could from him at the time. But he had a sawmill and 30 acres a few towns over. So all of his wood was wood that fell on his property. So wow. I knew that was good. But I mean, other than that, you know, like I've gotten wood from a couple reclaiming sources in the area. So Cleveland's got a few furniture makers that work in like only reclaimed wood that I've gotten stuff from, but there's also a sawmill that only mills up like the city trees that either came down or have to come down. So I'll get wood from them as well. And then for like all the Etsy stuff, I hit up my network of furniture makers in the area, and I jump in their scrap bins, because anything under a foot for them is scrap, and anything bigger than 6 inches to me is gold. So
absolutely, anything, your hair creations are definitely a result of that.
So yeah, that's me jumping in there, showing up with cold brew coffee, and jumping in their scrap bins and taking out the trash. So,
are you a cold brew guy?
Yeah.
I went up to Minneapolis, and my uncle just got into cold brew. He used to work at a grocery co-op in Minneapolis, and a lot of the dudes turned him on to cold brew. And he was explaining, he's like, Patrick, I'm telling you, you're a coffee guy. Here's how to do it. And he was like, and he was explaining it, and I love cooking, but God, I walked away going, that's too much effort for a cup of coffee, man. I'm sorry.
I let someone else do it for me. Right.
Well, there you go. Mike, I end, you know, and I was thinking actually, well, for one, banjo. Wait, are you going to dive into making banjos?
I want to. Yeah. I want to learn how to play banjo. So what's going to happen is I'm going to make a banjo. I'm never going to learn how to play banjo. But I'm like super into banjo music right now. Like
I'm watching the Steve Martin documentary on
yeah,
Apple TV, I think it is, or whatever.
I haven't seen
And
it. It's good.
yeah, it's okay. But and I come to find out he has a house in Asheville, North Carolina, and he plays with the
Is he still with the Steep Canyon Rangers?
Deep Canyon Rangers. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Yeah, and they're out of Asheville, and I mean, apparently, if I just head over there a couple hours from where I live, I could probably catch him at a concert. Just he'll show up at shows all the time, just out of the blue.
Yeah. Yeah, he's fantastic on banjo.
Well, Mike, I end every interview with you've been listening to my episodes, which thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, they're
man.
great. Yeah, they're awesome.
Thank you so much. And this one is no lesser awesome. What 3 tunes would you put on your Desert Island guitar mixtape? And you know what? Weissenborn tunes are completely acceptable. The tracks that you sent me were from all sorts of musicians on YouTube. If people wanted to look them up, specifically to the Weissenborns that you've created, how would they find these folks? Do you want to name names for me? I mean, I'll put them in the description on YouTube and the episode and all that. But
I can't remember which ones I sent you, but like Jerry Douglas is one. He plays. I think I sent a video of him playing one. Trevor Green was another musician that I collaborated with. He's fantastic on Weissenborn. And well, just in general, Al Petteway, he cut an album with one of my guitars. Sadly, he's no longer with us. Kelly Joe Phelps is another one that he had one of my instruments. Again, sadly not with us anymore, making slide music. But and then Megan Lovell, who was one of the latest ones. She's the slide sister in Larkin Poe. They have the 2 sister guitars. I think that they have some stuff on Instagram playing it. But yeah, those are all the guitar heroes that and like John Butler is another one to check out. He's got one. But yeah,
I like your approach of and I wonder how many builders do this. Talk with the musician. Find out who they are. Talk about stuff that has nothing to do with Weissenborns or music. Find out where they're coming from. And when you create their instrument, do you let that flow through you, the energy of your relationship with the musician?
Oh, for sure. And this is gonna sound cheese whiz, but a lot of times their music's playing while I'm building it. Like so the shop's full of their sounds when it's getting built. Yeah,
it's an energy thing for sure.
Yeah,
it's an energy.
And they'll come with a little note on the inside that only I know is there, and if you can read backwards in a mirror when you stick when you go in there to fix it.
Where do you put that little note? Is it in a specific spot?
It would be the bass side, lower bout. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Underneath the sound hole there.
Yeah, way down in there. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. And it's a note that talks to just them.
Yep. Usually, yeah.
Awesome.
And
that's tree. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And the spirit of the tree, the energy of their music through your hands, made mostly with tools that you've created, jigs that you've created, and sanding blocks and lights that you move across the surface to find the flaws before you finish it. That's worth waiting. That's worth waiting a year for sure.
I hope so, because I'm super fortunate. Yeah, all this. Yeah, it's a great experience. I love building with people.
Very cool, man. Very cool. What 3 songs would you pick, Mike?
All right. So this was a tough one. I wrote them down, and I'm going to cheat a little bit, and you can just cut off when I get to the last one, you can just cut me off because I'm going to throw in a couple extras. Right?
It's no problem at all, man. No problem at all.
The first one was, and you can really anything by Al Petteway, but specifically 7 Swans off of Waters in the Wild album. Like that's when I first learned about fingerstyle guitar, and when you hear like the music coming out of one guitar with 10 fingers, but it sounds like 4, 5, 6 people. It just blew my mind. And it's one of those albums that when, you know, like you just go on shuffle, like songs, shuffle it on Spotify because I'm lazy today, and that one pops up. Pretty much all of these, when any of these songs pop up, it takes me out of shuffle and I go on a deep dive into their discs. So all of these will pull me out of that. So Al Petteway is the first one. You can't go wrong with anything by Kelly Jo Phelps, but Lead Me On, the title track off of that album, is just, yeah, that's gold. I don't know if you know, do you know Kelly Jo Phelps?
I don't, but I soon will.
Yeah, you got to check him out. Yeah. And then the last one, I have 3. I've tied for 3, right? They're more contemporary artists, but Jason and Pharis Romero, right? So this is gonna be where my banjo kicks on here. He makes they both make banjos, but their music is unreal. Lost Lula is one that really stands out to me, but yeah, they're a husband-wife duo. He builds banjos, she does insane inlays, and like, you should check it out as a graphic designer. Like, her inlays are just like the layout and proportion. It's like, can she do better on the next one? I think she thinks she peaked here, and then the next one's way better. And that they're always different, and they're always, yeah. So you should check them out.
Absolutely.
Rosie by the Lowest Pair, another banjo player. Kendall Winter she's a fantastic guitarist and banjo. But like, yeah, they'll get me out of repeat. And then the last one, Jake Xerxes, I think it's Fussell. He just released a new album, but if you listen to Jubilee by him, it's gonna be nice. Those all pull me out of shuffle.
Mike, thank you so much, man. I do appreciate your time. I appreciate all the resources you sent me. You were by far the most involved guest invitation. I had 3 emails for, hey, Patrick, check out these videos. Hey, Patrick, here's my list of, dude, it was awesome. I'm like,
sure it wasn't annoying?
No, absolutely not. I wish everybody could do that. It guided me in the right direction because you are a man of many hats. But the one hat that you hold on to the most is creator. And I really do appreciate that, man. It's been really cool talking with you.
Well, you're a fan. I tell you, you have a great thing going, and you're a fantastic interviewer, conversationalist. You're good. You're doing. This is really awesome. So I wish you all the best.
I definitely appreciate it.
Great to meet you.
Yeah, and hi to the dogs for me.
Will do. Will do.
All right. Take care, Mike.